2024. Welcome, everyone. Full house today. Thank you very much for coming. I'd like to welcome Kelly Ward and Reed Barrett, who unfortunately were not able to make our first meeting. So I just like to welcome you both and thank you for being here. Moment of reflection. I'm just going to ask for a moment just to consider the business of the day. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. I'm going to add any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof, knowing you can claim later if so desire, but is there any? And seeing none, okay. Public participation. Members of the public are encouraged to provide the committee with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released. Members of the public who wish to make a deputation about a specific agenda item at the meeting must register in advance with legislative services by 4 p.m. on August 23rd, 2024 by contacting deputyclerkmeaford.ca or 519-538-1060, extension 1110. Presentations are limited to 10 minutes and deputations are limited to 5 minutes. And we do have a presentation today. We're very pleased to welcome Savannah Myers, the Director of Economic Development, Tourism, Culture for Grey County. Welcome, Savannah.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. You must watch County Council and know I always struggle with the mic. It's a real thing. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me today. And I'm really excited to be able to talk about some of this stuff with you. And I have provided a ton of slides. I'm not going to go through them all. I just wanted you to have the information. So I'm going to give you some examples of things that we're actually doing this year that you'll find in some of those slides. So the very first one that I want to talk about, these next two slides are an overview of what's happening in our economy right now. And we have seen a lot of change in the last couple of years. So the very first number, that is the number of people who are participating in the labor force. Those are the people who are either employed or looking for employment. And that number has grown dramatically. So I've got the 2021 numbers on the bottom. These are all from 2023 in the wine dots. But it's just to say that we're seeing significant growth. So of course, during the pandemic, we saw a decline right across the board. But even before the pandemic, these numbers used to be in the high 40s, and now they're in the mid 50s. So we're starting to see a real shift in the economy. And that is a good thing for us because that means that people are working and they want to work. The growing employment, that is the number of jobs that we have in Grey County right now. So we've crested the 50,000 mark, and that is significant. We see that with all kinds of growth right across the region. It isn't happening in one spot. It is happening everywhere we look in all of the different sectors. So that's an important indication too. One of the things that we've always been really proud of and really paid attention to is making sure we don't put all of our eggs in one basket. Because the last thing we want to do is have an economy based on one sector. Something happens, poof, it's gone. So it's really important that we're diversified. And that is something that Grey is very well off in, being diversified in the economy. So that's positive. Our declining unemployment rate is also a good sign. So we've seen another reduction in that, and that echoes with the increased employment rate. So on the next slide, we see participation rate and unemployment rate. And the reason why I have participation rate first is because you always hear about unemployment rate in the community. That is a number that people are instantly drawn to. But it doesn't mean anything unless we're looking at the participation rate too. We need to know how many people in our community are actually wanting to work, how many people are working and want to be in the workforce. So that's a number that we pay very close attention to. The higher it is, the better for us. And the fact that that is growing as well is very important. So we are now over a 60% participation rate that we haven't seen in a very, very long time. So that is good. Looking at the unemployment rate, so you have 2023 and 2024 trending there. We're actually sitting lower right now. It's about 2.4% this very moment. But what that tells us is that we are basically at full employment. So the people who are working and who have the skills and capabilities to work are working. And for those who are unemployed at this moment, there's some sort of gap. There's a barrier to why they're not in the workforce. And that's an area that we want to be able to focus on in terms of skill development and making sure the skills are matched. So the people who have the skills in the community are matched with what the economy is actually looking for right now. But what that is telling us is that we're going back to where we were pre-COVID. For so long, Grey County, and so it's Stratford Bruce Peninsula area, we're a huge region when it comes to the census. But that unemployment rate, we have almost always been the lowest in the province. And that is not a good thing. We don't want to be the lowest in the province because that means when our employers are looking for people, they have a very limited bank to be able to pull from. So we want to see that number hovering around 4% is a healthy vacancy rate. The same with buildings is the same with people. So a lot of shifts in the economy in the last little while. We'll keep going in the slides and sorry, next one, and then the next one. There we go. So the Economic Development Tourism Culture Master Plan, we developed this last year. It was a year-long project and many of you in the room participated, and I thank you so much for that. It was a really good opportunity to look at where we wanted to go in the next 10 years. So with official plans, we're always looking forward, 20, 25 years, but most strategic plans, we only look at a 5-year window, and we wanted to look at something more. So this is a 10-year plan with 5-year actions so that we can adjust as we go. What our commitment is from economic development, tourism, culture, is that everything we do is for our people. Everything that our department does is looking to care for our people in place, past, present, and future. If we can do that, we'll be in a really good state. So we're working to build an enabling environment for people in business to invest and to build community pride. It's important also to say when we talk about, job creation and things like that, we are not the ones creating jobs. We don't want to be the ones creating jobs. We want to make the environment a place for businesses to create those jobs. So we are not the job creators, we're the enablers, we're the facilitators. That's what we do in economic development. And that's really important that we understand that that is our role. So on the next slide, this was just to give you an indication. So those first numbers I showed you are recent, 23 and 24. This is an indication of what's happened over the last 5 years. So I just want to take a look at the very, very first line there, and that is the business growth. And it's grown again. So we're just under 13,000 businesses in Grey County right now. But during the pandemic, we still grew. This is a region of entrepreneurs. You will notice, you'll experience it in your everyday. We do things very differently here. We like to get things done ourselves. And if it doesn't exist for us, if the resource isn't there, somebody is going to come up with the idea to do it. And they're going to be able to create it in this environment so that we have access to it. And we're so proud of that. And that's something that we want to continue to encourage. So that's part of why we run the Business Enterprise Center for the whole region, because some of the things make a lot of sense when it's done regionally compared to municipally. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next slide. So what is our role? This is a question we've asked ourselves a lot, and this was actually one of the first things that Eric and I talked about when he started here. How does it work when you have lower tier and upper tier? And you'll notice I never call you a lower tier because I just don't like that. Member municipality, that's what you'll always hear Grey County referred to you as. But what is the role between a member municipality and the county, and then thinking above and beyond to provincial and federal governments as well? We all have a role to play. There's no reason for us to be duplicating efforts at any point. So what we found really interesting during our master plan development and in the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years is that our role, even though we share the exact same geography, we offer a different view. And that's because at the county, we are not looking at any of the lines, any of the boundaries anywhere in the region. We're looking at what is happening trends-wise, what's happening with businesses, what's happening with residents, where do the opportunities lie? And when we mix that with what's happening on the ground and the eyes and the ears that you have here on the ground to know your business community and know what's happening, where those opportunities and challenges are, when those come together, that's where all the magic happens. So it's really important as we work through the master plan implementation that we keep track of what our role is and we try and work together on it as we move forward. So collaboration, I know it's a keyword that people hear all the time, but it really is gold when it works well. And I've often struggled with collaboration. It's a love-hate with it because it's really hard to collaborate and to know our roles and to stick within them and not try and compete. But I think that we've done a really good job over the last couple of years of understanding that and getting past the point of competition, realizing that we're all in this together. And what benefits one benefits the other. So we don't have one community in Grey County itself, anywhere else. Nobody can sustain themselves. Everybody needs their neighbors. We all rely on our neighbors because that is the economy. It's a market and it's shifting constantly. So that is a way that we have been looking at economic development, and it seems to be working very well. So we'll go to the next, and then the next one, and then the next one. Sorry, and the next one, sorry. If I click it, then I don't have to tell you that. So sorry, I provided you so many slides, but I just wanted you to have the same information. So I very much encourage you to read our master plan. It's a very long document, but I know I'm biased. I think it's really good. We put a lot of effort into it. It was done with a lot of consultation, and it was a really neat process where even though we had a consultant come in to ask the tough questions, so the people were honest, bitterly honest in most cases, we were able to create the priority actions as a working group. So all of the member municipalities and county staff got together and we took all the information and created this list of things that we knew we could do that fit where we needed to go as a community. So leadership and collaboration, that's all about building cohesion. And it is the absolute first priority, because if we're not speaking the same language and we're not understanding the role that all of our neighbors play and our part in that greater role, it's really hard to attract people in and to retain people, because they see competition and they don't want to be talking about it. They want to see that we're here, all of us, as your army, as your group, as your support and your champion, that we're here to welcome you and to keep you here. So that's where that very first priority really comes from. And we're getting ready this fall to do our very first inaugural Economic Development Leadership Forum. And that is for all municipal councilors and county councilors and senior leadership staff from right across Grey, to start to build that same language and to understand and just to get consensus about what it is that we want to do as a unit and where we're going to go from here. Because we can't have some of those tougher conversations about municipal partnerships or boundary adjustment case studies if we're not all rolling from the very same page at the beginning. So that's where we're headed in years 2 and beyond. So the next slide is all about investment readiness, and this is about building capacity. So again, thinking about the roles that we have, we've introduced a lot of tools and templates over this past year so that you have the data at your fingertips to actually tell you what's happening in your communities. So we have a GIS dashboard that tells you census information. This is real. This is who's here. This is what your community looks like. It exists for all 9 of our member municipalities and for Grey County. We also have a really neat tool called Spotlight, and that looks at the folks in your communities and what they spend their money on, where they spend their money, so that we can do market analysis and we can understand the health of the economy. It also gives us some projections, because waiting for census every 4 years to get the true information is very difficult. So we finally found a tool that within 2% will give us accuracy of how many jobs we have, how many businesses we have, and where we are community-wise. So that's important. It isn't exact, but it at least helps us give those best estimates as we're developing those programs and supports to move forward. Looking at those tools as the base, foundational year 1 for where we're going to go, again, in some of those exciting but difficult conversations, and thinking of significant regional economic development projects. You have one right here in your community that is a doozy. Thinking of municipally owned employment lands. These are the types of things that we need to think about, but it's hard to all think about them on our own. So this is, again, when we go back to the county versus member municipality role, what are the things that we can help start those conversations, get the data that we need to be able to back it up, build case studies, and then actually go and shop it out on the market. Because when we're going with larger projects, I mean, we've talked to the province and the feds in the past about significant projects that we thought were huge, and they told us they're too small. We don't play in this pool because it's too tiny. You need to come to us with something bigger. And that is a difficult thing to do when everybody's working itty bitty little pieces. So we need to be able to look again from that regional perspective at what those opportunities are now and what they can be. Because if we're not thinking about them in the future, then we're going to be in trouble 5 or 10 years from now, because it takes a long time to bring land onto the market, and it takes a long time to train people with the skills. So both of those things are huge pieces of investment readiness and take a long time to develop. The next slide talks about business retention and expansion. You will always find our focus here first. Before attracting a business in, we focus on the businesses that we have here in the communities. And that's why, again, Eric's role and the economic development role on the ground is so vitally important, because we need, those connections and the understanding of really truly what's happening with your business community. The instant kind of as it happens, report back to be able to say, this is what's happening in Meaford today. This is what my businesses are experiencing. These are the trends. This is where the challenge is. Here's a skill gap that we don't have. So then we can work collectively with our municipalities, work with Georgian College and others to make sure that we're putting those pieces in. And that's how Sydenham Campus came about. And your chair was so lovely to join us for our grand opening and got a full tour. And I hope the rest of you will come and tour Sydenham as well, because that really was born out of a business retention and expansion project. That was years of business consultations telling us we cannot send people out of this region anymore to get the skills training they need. They have families, they have lives. Driving 2 hours to get training and coming back is not going to cut it anymore. So we worked with Georgian College, we worked with the province, we developed Sydenham Campus, we helped Georgian with their TDA, which is all of the training delivery agent seats, and we went from 100 apprenticeships on site to 600 every year. So we've grown that by 500 apprentices who are now able to work in the community. And that didn't exist before, but that's why BRNE is so important, because when we have the data and the statistics to back up the need, we can put the programs together with the partners, again, facilitating through economic development. Looking at regional sector roundtables, those are all coming up this fall as a start. So that's just formalizing the BRNE a little bit more. And that will also help us continue to work with Georgian College and others as we continue to grow. But this just to say that BRNE, if you did nothing else in economic development, doing BRNE is the one thing that will always win in your community, because you will always be connected to your businesses. And you want that phone call before the media gets the phone call about something not going well. So the next slide is about entrepreneurship and innovation. And this is where Sydenham Campus really falls, the Business Enterprise Center falls. And as I mentioned earlier, we've seen a lot of business growth. And in 2018, we made a strategic decision to absorb the Business Enterprise Center. So it used to live in Owen Sound. It was there for 17 years and it was run by the city. We took it over in 2018 so that we could really truly expand it to the entire region. It always served the region, but it just wasn't quite understood that it was a regional thing that everybody could tap into. So we have taken that over, and it is significant how many businesses come through those doors to be able to talk about what does it look like to start a business? What do I need to do for my business plan? Where am I going to go? And that's why that connection, again, locally is so important, because that's when we can say, you know, Meaford has this market. You need to talk to Eric, who's going to bring you downtown or wherever it makes sense for the business to be. Those are the connections that leaves an entrepreneur not wondering, who do I talk to? Where do I go? Oh my gosh, there's so many people. This is too much for me. I just want to start my business. To be able to say, here you go, here's the right person every time. So those relationships are absolutely key. And we want to continue to build that network so that we see pods all over the place for innovation and networking. It doesn't all need to be in one location. So we've got Launchpad in Hanover. We now have the Makerspace in Owen Sound that lives in Sydenham Campus. We'd like to be able to see multiple pods like that all over our communities. And a lot of the equipment in both is mobile. So that way we can pick it up and we can move it and we can do pop-up events and things like that, because it doesn't always need to be in one spot. And the last priority is destination development. And this really is looking at the tourism component and the welcoming communities component of where we are and where we want to go. So this has been a struggle for a long time. Tourism is huge here, and we want it to be a base economy. But it also, nobody really owns it, because most of the things that we market, we don't own. We have no actual control over. So that's why you have seen so many capacity issues and things over the course of the pandemic, when tourism was growing before the pandemic ever came. But that just kind of popped us into high gear, and everybody knows who Grey County is now. Everybody is coming here and they want to enjoy it, and we want our tourists to have a good experience. We want our residents and businesses to have a good experience. We don't want conflict when that's happening. But when we go back to destination, you know, we bounce back and forth between management, protocols. Protocols is where we landed, because we can't manage something we don't own. We can develop policies and we can develop experiences and itineraries and relationships, but we can't actually say yes or no to any one thing that's happening. So again, trying to figure out what is our role and making sure that we put our efforts where they need to be. But thinking of the message and where we market, a lot of our member municipalities and our smaller destination management organizations are really focusing inward. We have the ability and the megaphone to be able to reach outward. So we communicate quite often now to the GTA and all of Ontario. And there's a really cool, it's called Global Heroes, that we just did. And that went to all of Ontario and the GTA specifically. Over 1.5 million people saw that. And it was very much about, you know, when you come here, we want you to come here and enjoy it like we enjoy it. This is our home. Please come and experience Grey County, because we also know that tourists typically end up as residents. People love it here and they don't want to go back eventually. And then they become a resident. And that's a really important tool that we need to be able to focus on. So that's where, tourism used to be its own department. It is now very much part of economic development because it is a huge driver. And it's looking at those opportunities to use tourism as a way to build economic development for the long term that we see a lot of potential in. The very last point there is about communicating, promoting, and celebrating our diverse communities. We've done a lot of work in the last 5 years with the introduction of Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership, working with our partners, our communities, our businesses to become a more welcoming community, because we know we need to be able to do that. We're in rural Ontario. We have our challenges, but we have amazing people here. And it is phenomenal to see how welcoming and the shifts that have really happened in the last while and what those success stories look like. If we want to continue to grow, this is an area that we have to continue to work in, because we ourselves cannot repopulate us. We already know that. We're looking at the demographics now. We're going to talk 2 weeks about it on September 5th at our Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee, what our demographics look like, and they're not great. So we're concerned about what it looks like 5-10 years from now, because as it hits the province in the mid 2030s, it's going to hit us earlier because we are a lot older and we've got a lot of work to do, which means that we have a lot of attraction to bring to this area and great potential if we're prepared. So that's the work that we're trying to put in place now, is that preparation, so that when the time does come, we're ready to go. And that's what economic development is really truly all about. We're thinking 10, 15, 20 years down the line, pulling it back to what are the things we need to think about now? What are the investments we need to make now, so that when the time comes, we're actually ready to go? And that's a shift that has started with the introduction of this master plan that I'm very, very proud of. And that was a lot of information to throw at you. I always do that, and I'm sorry, but I am happy to take any questions you have and happy to come back again down the line if you would like to. We've got lots of outcomes to talk about, but I already weaved into those, so I'll save you more slides, but they are there if you'd like to take a look.
Thank you very much, Savannah. We'll always take a lot of information when it's good information. That was really good. We really appreciate it. I'll just say personally, from the council perspective, we're really fortunate to have Grey County. Their economic development work is really, really instrumental, and we're really pleased to be a part of that. And I know our deputy mayor is involved directly on the committees, and it's just a boon for us. I will say 2 things. One, you said we love it here. Thank you for espousing Meaford's slogan in your speech. The other thing was Shirley and I were just at AMO, and I was at a youth retention concurrent session, and 3 students from various universities around Southern Ontario, and one of them espoused sitting on campus as a shining example of what could be done at a county level that can really, really help communities. So that I thought was a really good feather in our cap at AMO. So
makes me want to be happy to answer. Thank you.
So I'll throw it open. Would anyone like to have any questions or comments for Savannah?
So,
Mayor, sorry,
please.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to begin by expressing my appreciation to Savannah. I think you can all understand now at County Council the enthusiasm that Savannah brings to the podium, and every one of us feels so motivated and inspired after hearing Savannah speak. So I just can't help smiling as I listen to you, Savannah. I do have a few questions, but I'll just start with 1 or 2, and hopefully the chair will be kind enough to come back to me. You mentioned demographics, and that that's an issue for us, which we know with our average age here. But I just wanted to quickly share that Bay Bounds, which is a net zero development here on Highway 26, has a sales center downtown, and I went in and talked to the girl there, and she shared with me something that I thought was really interesting, that 80% of the people who are inquiring about those homes are between the ages of 30 and 50. And it is a net zero development. So whether that is the inspiration there, perhaps it is. But I'll start with one question, going back to page 12, and you mentioned physician recruitment. And I just wondered, Savannah, if you could speak a little bit to how you see yourself and Grey County Economic Development, Culture and Tourism being involved in doctor recruitment for the county.
Sure, that is a great question. Through you, Mr. Chair, we don't intend to do physician recruitment, but we do intend to provide tools and templates to anybody who is working in physician recruitment. So one of the things, I was involved in it when I worked in Hanover years and years ago, and there were some really cool policies that they had set up around housing. And at that time, they had purchased a house in a neighborhood to integrate those who are coming in with neighbors so that it really felt like home, and because it's a lot harder to walk away from a neighbor than it is from just an empty apartment. So those are things that we're looking at through CIP policies, through the community improvement plans, because there's a lot that we're limited as municipalities to do, but CIPs can be one of our best tools when it comes to those types of investments. So that's something that we're actually actively looking at right now to see what types of incentives there could be to assist with that type of investment. And then providing images, videos, graphics, really good recruitment and retention tools so that people can start to visualize what it's like to be here and they can fall in love. Very similar to how we do it with tourism, because we know that when people are coming to the area, they want to feel connected. So that's where you see networking events like the Young Professionals Network. Part of that was born out of physician recruitment and employee recruitment, trying to be able to build those networks outside of the office. So it's little things that we then encourage our hospitals to participate in and our clinics to participate in so that they can send folks to participate in events, or they can take advantage of the really good photography and videos that we have as a lure piece when they're putting together their information.
Michael.
So, Mr. Chair, thanks. And you should be proud of that plan. And it was exciting to hear that. Mike Ising is sort of new to some of this stuff, but I wanted to pick up the beginning and the end of your presentation, which really link together. It's a very encouraging thing. High participation rate, low unemployment, and a growing group of people available to work. But if there are these concerns about a shrinking population, then the question really is what kind of data you have on that. Like, is it just that we're an older population? When people leave us, where are they going? When people come here, and at what rate do they come? Where do they come from, and what do they come to do? So that, the first slide makes you feel as though that's nothing you'd ever have to worry about. You've got a growing labor force, low unemployment and all of that kind of thing. But if something's coming down the road, that will hit you in a big hurry, because the one thing you can be sure of with demographics is if you want to know how many 80-year-olds there are going to be here in 10 years, count the 70-year-olds today, right? So this is hard science almost, right? So that was a very interesting thing for me to hear you put the two of those together. And I'm assuming you did that deliberately to bookend the presentation, but that may be the biggest thing for us to think about.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. If we thought of nothing else, that if we could figure out demographics would be a game changer. So I love that you pulled that out, because when we look at, in economic development, we need to look at today and we need to look at way down the line, because it takes a long time to put those tools in place. So the beginning of the slide, what it looks like today is good. Like, it looks really good today, but 5 years from now, it does not look good. And there's been so much conversation through the pandemic, and it continues. Where did all the people go? People are lazy. People aren't working. That's not the case. People are aging out. That's all that's happening. It's the boomers. We've been looking at this all the way through. We knew it was coming. It's here, and it's happening fast and furious. So we need to attract more people in to be able to maintain, let alone grow. So we have a lot of attraction to be able to do over the next little while. And the boomers have been wonderful for us. They have worked longer. They come back and they work again because they want to stay involved in their community, and they're looking for part-time roles and things like that. So that has been helpful, and we haven't seen it hit quite as hard, but it's not going to be like that in 5 years from now. If we did nothing, we decline. And that's all there is to it. So we don't want to decline. We want to continue the growth, and we see huge potential there.
So sorry again, Mr. Chair, but to the extent people are coming, Who are they and where are they coming from?
So we are pinpointing that as we speak. We're getting ready for everything will be ready in November, and you'll all have that information available as well afterwards. But we are looking at commuter patterns, at migration patterns to find out where people are coming, exactly where they're landing, where they came from. Now with the data that we have, we can also tell where their employment brackets are and their income brackets are, where they're now spending their money. It's a little bit scary what data can tell you, but we have access to it now. And we're really doing a deep dive. So we don't want to skim the surface on it because we can tell a million stories with data depending on how we want to crunch it. But we want to tell the honest, true story so that we are prepared when it comes down the line. So I don't have those answers for you right now, but I can tell you we're starting to get that information, which has been a huge shift.
Anyone else? Reed.
First, let me say thank you for your presentation. It was very, very good. I'm glad to hear that Grey County is looking at all of the communities together, because the solo would not be an attractive workforce. There's a lot of things that are advantages when we work together. One of the things that, as you went through the presentation, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of who's here and being able to influence firms to be attracted here. I was wondering if there was any thought in terms of influencing the influencers. So by having the municipalities work together to understand how they would effectively present a business opportunity to a potential site selector, organizing our strengths, organizing how we could work together, maybe do some familiarization tours, and put our best foot forward so that we're all doing it in the same consistent fashion. Has there been any thought or work on that?
Yes, absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair. That is where the leadership forum is our first effort to do that at the political level. So we have long done it at the staff level. We've got an amazing working group where we've got economic development officers from across the region. We meet every quarter and we actually set our work plan based on what it is that they need. And that's how the strategy was developed as well. But looking at doing that politically now with all of our elected officials, absolutely. That's where we want to be able to go. Because we do know from working with site selectors and others, there are two things that they really look for. The first is, do we actually have the land that they need, which right now we don't. And the second, do we have the right attitude and willingness to welcome whichever investment it is that we're doing? So we don't have to be open to every investment. That's not a thing that we would ever say, that anyone who comes knocking, we must say yes to. We want the right investment, but we need to agree on what that is. And it's going to be different across the region, and that's okay. But we still need each municipality to support the other. Because when we're talking to investors, and I can give you an example of one a couple of years ago, and it was in the north of Grey, but what was happening in the Mennonite manufacturing cluster in the south of Grey was absolutely key. What was happening in Meaford and Blue Mountain for lifestyle was very important. And what was happening downtown Owen Sound for servicing in downtown Hanover was equally important. So it was something in the midst of nowhere that asked us very little about that community. It was everything that was happening around it that would provide the life for all of the workers. That's what mattered. So we need to be able to speak with that same voice and encourage wherever it lands in Grey, it's going to help us in Grey. So if Meaford gets it, or if Southgate gets it, or Hanover gets it, it is going to impact all of us because that's job creation and wealth locally.
Anyone else? Ron?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Sarah, for your presentation today. As you're well aware, Meaford has recently made a significant investment in economic development. Eric is here with us today. From your perspective, do you have any ideas as to how we can maximize? You've given us globally some good ideas today. Do you have any specific ideas so that we could maximize the return on this for our community?
That is a great question. Through you, Mr. Chair. That was one of the first things that Eric and I talked about. What is the one thing that he can do locally to really bring the most impact? And was connecting with your businesses, being that very first point of contact, building the trust so that people know I can talk to Eric. I'm not worried about something that's, could be a problem, is a problem right now. You get that very first phone call. Understanding what the trends are, where the opportunities. So I know the business mix analysis is one that you're looking at kind of right away for downtown Meaford, and understanding where the gaps are within the business community. Some of those things will be immediately helpful, and you'll start to see a shift in your community and pride build in your community that will impact everything that you do, whether it's in economic development or any other part of the municipality, because you're building that connection and that rapport. And that takes a long time. And it takes a lot of people power to be able to do that. So having economic development staff is so important. Not all of our municipalities have economic development staff, and some are wearing multiple hats. But having that attention locally will be immediately impactful. And then utilizing the tools that we provide. Like, we don't want to create things that people ask for just to have them sit on a shelf. That is the last thing we want to do. We would never create a strategy or a tool that is too difficult or sets too high of expectations, because then it's always just daunting and it's not used. So now that we've got the data assets, we've got the spotlight tools, we've got a digital asset library that we developed, all of that happened this year, because this really is foundational year one. Using those would be the second thing.
Thank you very much for your response.
Evelyn.
You mentioned that when you're working as a whole with Gray, that it helps with communities know what it is and how they want to grow. So how important do you feel it is that local communities go through an exercise to identify that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, very. It is something that should be done first and then re-looked at constantly, because you need to know who you are and who you want to be. And it's getting that bridge of who you want to be. We can't go after investment until we know what it is that you want. And we would never come in and tell you, hey, Meaford, you need to be this, and this is the type of business that you're going to have, because that's not authentic either. And it would never fit. It needs to be able to come from the ground up. So that is absolutely key. And then using that also to build community pride, so that you don't have conflict between investment coming in and the current, residents or businesses that you have, because it can all work together so well if it's done in step.
So, because I think that's one of the things this group will have to deal with, and again, in terms of how soon do we go about getting that community vision. And, I think there's been a lot of discussion on it prior years. So.
Feels a bit like you're preaching to the choir, I guess. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A comment, a plug, and a question, if I may. I just wanted to share some good news, and perhaps you're aware of this, Savannah, but just to let everyone know that as of next week, Eric will have a small medium business liaison working with him, and we are delighted that that position has been created. So that fits so well with what you've been speaking to. The plug is, I'm just making an assumption because we have no idea if TC Energy is moving forward or not. But if we make an assumption that perhaps it does, I'd love to see Meaford considered for that large scale industrial park. And, I'm thinking out on the 610 corridor, because, our municipality having Highway 26 and having Highway 6 and 10 is quite a bonus, and would love to see us considered, because I assume there will be some subsidiary businesses that will want to have proximity to the project, again, making the assumption that it does go forward. And getting to my question, back in the presentation, you mentioned boundary adjustment case studies, and I just wondered if you could expand a little bit on what you're thinking in that regard.
Sure, that is a good one. And through you, Mr. Chair, we don't have any preconceived assumptions of what that would look like. What we want to be able to study, when we remove all the lines, where does it make sense for some of those large scale industrial parks, knowing where the service is and where the land is, because it's not always in the same municipality. Looking also at what opportunities exist for current businesses looking to expand. We've got one example of a business who touches 3 municipalities and wants to be able to expand. So how does that make sense for that business to be able to do it? So we would never come back and say, you need to just look like this. What we want to be able to do is look at very specifically starting with the industrial parcels. Where could those go? And when we talk large scale industrial parcels, we mean 500 to 1,000 acres, large scale industrial parcels. Small ones, we desperately need municipally owned land. And the reason why municipally owned land over private land is because in the 11th hour, always goes up and then we lose the investment. So municipally owned land doesn't do that. Because we've got control and we want to see that investment. It doesn't mean we're giving away land for free. It just means that we are really good, honest folks to work with. And that's important when it comes to those land pieces. But the large scale would really assist in where we're going to go. Because again, when we think of those demographics down the road, where are those jobs that are going to attract that many more people than what we have today? And knowing jobs are changing, and we're seeing huge shifts in some of our economies around having to go with robotics and animation because they just don't have the people. Agriculture is huge. They have been a wonderful example of what that looks like. When we look at the demographics, I think it's 40% that it has shrunk in a labor force, which normally would be terrifying. But they knew that was coming and they have been automating like crazy and getting robotics in and taking the latest technology. So the staff that they have now are highly skilled in our agricultural community. So that's the type of work that we want to be able to do. But industrial land is where we're starting. I don't know where it'll go from there. It'll depend what council wants to go from there, but that's where we want to be able to start as early as next year to start thinking about that.
Anyone else have any questions for Savannah? Ron.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We're talking about attracting business, and of course, attracting business, we're increasing our workforce. With respect to increasing the workforce, has there been any consideration with expanding licensed childcare facilities to accommodate these workers that we're attempting to attract?
Like the way you think. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think we're one of the only ones in the province, and I'm very proud of that works with our Children's Services Department. Economic Development and Children's Services at Grey have a very good relationship. And part of what we've done is at Sydenham, where we have brought Georgian College's ECE program into the building. We've worked with them to introduce an online version for ECE as well. They have a daycare where they do all their live observations, and we have a Children's Services Innovation Hub that's run by our staff, so the licensed provider. So all 3 of them were working underneath one roof, and that we have now seen an increase in the number of ECEs coming into the programs because that's where our stumbling block is. We have a waiting list of 2,500 kids right now in Grey County, which means we have a lot of parents who are either not working or not working to their full capabilities because we don't have the spaces. But until we can figure out the wages, which is above and beyond us, that's a provincial piece that our Children's Services team has been advocating for years. We are now advocating for them as well through Western Ontario Wardens Caucus and others. It is starting to increase the wage that they have, but it's only if you're registered ECE. So now we're trying to work and find out how do we take somebody who doesn't have their qualifications and enable them to get their qualifications in a way that isn't disruptive because there's nobody to backfill them. And it just isn't as appetizing to stop what you're doing and go back to full-time school for a year. So we're trying to work with the college system and our ECE side and bridge that facilitation again to try and see some difference. But we have a huge uphill battle there. And I think that we're making strides, but we're taking little steps when we need to be running a marathon.
Michael.
Mr. Chair, you're going to think I obsess on demographics, but the truth is, this brings us right back to the question, right? We say, what do we want? When the question should almost be, who do we want? Do we want young people? Do we want people who are open to innovation? As soon as you start making that be the template where you ask questions, you start prioritizing things like childcare. You know, you start prioritizing things like the relationship with Georgian College and things like that. So it probably makes sense as you work your way through this process, and that I look forward to talking to you in November. But that's the big question. Who do you want here? Of course, we want businesses that will throw off jobs, but for whom, right? Because there are different kinds for different people, some of which won't last through the next transition, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Young families, that is priority one. Yep, absolutely. But it also means putting those services in place as we go.
Right.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you very much again, Savannah.
Thank you.
Now that we have an economic development department that we are populating, really excited about the prospects of working together moving forward to make Meaford and Olive Gray proud. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to come back anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
Moving on. I don't believe, Alex, we have any delegations on agenda items. Thank you very much. So the approval of the minutes. I'm going to move that the minutes of the June 26, 2024 meeting of the Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee be approved as presented. This was in everyone's bundle, so I'm presuming everybody's had a chance to look at it. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Michael and Shirley. Any questions or comments on? And seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to items for information. I'm going to, in your agenda, you see the work plan discussion, which again was forwarded to everybody in the agenda package. So I think I will turn this over to Reed to just talk a little about this document and why it is in here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess not having attended the last meeting, I thought I'd kind of bring it back a little bit to the work plan that had been worked from the previous Economic Development Advisory Group, as well as before that, the task force that actually worked with McSweeney consultants to put together a overall work plan. And so this is kind of the accumulation of a lot of different focus groups, discussions to come up with a work plan. And so as we move into the new growing the economy, I thought we should go back to our kind of roots of the previous goals that were established under the Economic Advisory Group. I think we heard earlier from Evelyn and from Savannah how important a vision is. And the first goal in this overall plan is to develop a community vision and assist with that in any way possible. The rest is fairly straightforward: becoming investment ready, building the right technology infrastructure, relationship building, strengthening downtown, and anything to do with supporting the workers, which would be housing, daycare, a number of different items. But I thought it would be a great start to review this and see if we're still on track as a committee to push this forward.
Thank you, Reed. Let me preface something here. This is specifically an advisory committee for council. I would like to see us exactly do that. We should be making recommendations to council. What that's going to look like, what shape that's going to take is obviously going to come from the conversation surrounding. I'll also comment that this was developed for the people at this table, happen to be kind of involved with the past committee and are aware of this. So that's a shortcut for us. Unfortunately, there's a lot of information here to be discussed at a committee level. So we're going to have to figure out how to take palatable bites out of this. Last time we were here, Alec, you gave me marching orders if you had to be out of here by 3 o'clock because we had another meeting afterwards. I don't think that's happening today. Not that we want it till 4. Okay, not gonna say not that we want to be here till 7, but I just wanted to make sure I was not stepping over bounds. So I would like to kind of hear how we would kind of do this because it is a lot of information. There is a lot of really valuable information, and we're going to have to figure out how to parse this in a manner that we can discuss it intelligently and move it forward. Surely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just like to add, thank you, first of all, for bringing this to the agenda for today. And yes, Reed and Evelyn in particular put a lot of effort into this during the time of our prior Economic Development Committee. And I think it really got stalled at that point because we didn't have staff resources to undertake any of these recommendations. But now that we do, I think with your permission, I'd like to put Eric on the spot and just ask him if he feels that this is a document worth reviewing, worth spending a little time on, and worth considering. I mean, it is, well, I guess pushing a couple of years now since this was created, and that was, almost the end of COVID, but not quite. And is all of this still relevant? Does it kind of fit with some of the work plan that you're already considering? So I just thought, if I may, Eric, I'd just like to ask for your high-level comments on this.
For sure, through you, Mr. Chair. This is a very useful document for me to review. My work plan is being developed on a daily basis. I'm still 60 days into the job, so I'm assessing what our employee situation is. So my priority list is very different than this one at this point, but this is very helpful for me to review. What would be helpful for me at this point from this committee is to identify maybe some of the top priorities for this committee. And I just narrow this down a little bit, but we are reviewing this on a very regular basis. The strat plan is being reviewed. We're on the verge of looking to develop a new strat plan. This one expires in 2024, so soon we'll be looking towards the next one. So that's a 2025 creation, maybe a 2026 release. So between now and then, I think identifying the priorities I'm not sure how thoroughly we can get through all of these things, but it'd be good for us to know what the priorities are.
Thank you for mentioning the strat plan. So again, harkening back to the desire to actually make recommendations. And I know council has not specifically kind of directed that yet. I thought that actually would have been a good motion to come out of this committee, is to literally kind of make the recommendation that staff does look at the 2020 strat plan and start to develop and look at the gaps, look at the analysis in terms of what's changed. There was a lot of public input at that time that was really valuable. It was interesting because it was pre-COVID. So what has changed since then is going to be paramount. But I think with this advisory committee's blessing, I would like to see us make a recommendation to an official recommendation to council that the strat plan be updated based on the principles that are now happening in the community. Evelyn?
My feeling is that we probably, with the strat plan though, there needs to be that focus on, because it wasn't strongly focused in the area of economic development. In the sense of picking what are the priorities. For example, when the county is trying to say, okay, here are different businesses that are approaching us, we can't tell people saying, well, our community had discussions on these things and we really want to go green, or we want to go whatever it is. How do we want to be seen? What kind of businesses do we want? And people will get behind and support because it is a matching of the community and businesses that come forward. And it's questions we're going to, and I would hope as the new year goes on and people are aware that Eric is in place and that we have some more information about our community and our businesses, that we're able to tell people, look, we can really get behind this. And any community that has clearly done that homework has been shown to be much more successful. When you look at best practices, knowing who you want to be, how you want to grow up as a community is key. Because when the fit is right, everybody gets excited, and everybody's behind it. And I think we need some of those discussions in our community to say, what really, so how do representatives of the municipality and everybody else say, yeah, this is the kind of businesses and things that really fit with where we see ourselves as a community. So to me, to wait and do this in 2 years from now, we're putting it off another 2 years. I mean, this was a discussion that was had 2 years ago and it never got any. And now we're saying, let's put it off another 2 years. That's kind of what I hear. Now, I know you're saying, well, let's make a recommendation, but I'd like to see that recommendation be stronger and say, let's do this sooner rather than later. And especially around, if we really are serious about wanting to move economic development forward in our community, is that we have got to do a little bit of that homework. And I don't think it requires major meetings. I think, this community is pretty good at getting together if we allow the opportunities to give guidance to council and to others that would really be helpful.
Thank you, Evelyn. The interesting point there is literally the strat plan is in place now, expires in 4 months. It's the end of 24. So theoretically, I think my hope on that was that recommendation was kind of versed to be as soon as possible because 2025 is literally 4 months away. So what that involves, and again, then I'll throw this over to Eric for comment, because I'm presuming that any strat plan that's going to come in place is not necessarily going to be as in-depth as what we did that first time, but it is going to involve public engagement, and it is going to involve staff and county level engagement, so that this is something that's not going to hopefully be kicked to the curb for 2 years, but it is still going to have to require on information from many different sources to compile this properly.
Through Mr. Chair. The county is currently in a discovery phase themselves. They've got focus groups coming up. There's sector focus groups. They've broken it into 4 separate sectors, and we are putting forward names to include businesses in our municipality. There's a session on September the 5th, which is with all the EDOs from across the county. So they're very much in gathering information phase at this point. The presentation we saw today was very informative, but I think that they're still learning. And I think that the next 4 months for us is going to be that same sort of exercise where we'll be engaging businesses and in all the different sectors that they've determined, and come back with our own data. So that will be for us. And then I think at that point we will have some information and some stories to share and some data to share. And that from that, I think we can then start to strategize on what that next strat plan looks like.
Question, Shirley?
Yes, and a thought. I mean, if we want to move this, sort of keep it on schedule, I guess it would be the point, then I think we need to make sure that there's funding in the upcoming budget to accommodate this study. But I come back to the first point from the prior recommendations, which is develop a community vision and priorities for the municipality of Meaford. And I'm wondering if certainly if you, Mr. Chair, and if members of the committee agree, if that is something that we could kind of focus on and get that ball rolling, because I think if we're going to do a new strat plan, that's wonderful, and we absolutely should and need to do that. But shouldn't we have a conversation about creating this vision first? And then that will help us then to create the plan.
Eric?
Yeah, if I may, those questions of the vision creation is, as she suggested, Savannah suggested, was, who we are and where are we going. Those are the 2 big questions, and I think that we need to identify that through some engagement, and that's the plan for us, is to do some engagement and get a better idea, and from there, then I think we can have a better conversation about the timing for the strat plan.
Great.
I think the question that I'm hearing is, in all of Grey County, Meaford might be have some uniqueness to it. And so if we wait for the sector roundtables, we'll be getting Grey County's vision. We won't necessarily be understanding where Meaford wants to go. And so I think it's kind of a seesaw. I think we really need to hone in on what would be good for Meaford, and know that when we work with Grey County, what we can do well and where we want to go with it, so that our priorities are clear.
Ron.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think what we're looking at here, and I would like to have us develop something ongoing very early in this. The thing that I look at is tourism in Meaford seems to be a priority presently and so on like that. I'd like us to develop possibly a booklet reflecting tourism, and then do a media video item. We have many things to feature in Meaford. We have the harbor, we have the splash pad, we have the waterfront park, we have local farm markets, trails, golf, historic. And then from events, we have Summerfest, we have Canada Day, we have Christmas on the Bay, we have curling bonspiels, we have baseball tournaments, we have hockey tournaments, and so on like that. So I look at us developing some sort of communication device early in the year so that all of these events can be marked on people's calendars. And so we have the opportunity to attract people to Meaford, which generally means economic benefit for our businesses. The media to do that, you can look at a printed document, you could look at social media and so on like that. I think in Meaford, we have the ability to develop that on a video basis. We have an unbelievable facility to offer it. Meaford Hall offers presentations on a regular basis. Why couldn't we develop a preview to be presented at Meaford Hall? Many of those people at Meaford Hall are from outside the community. And in addition, we could be utilizing some of the market budgets of all of the projects that are happening in town. And I think we could get that kicked off very early with a meeting of all of these groups in town that are providing these activities.
Thank you, Ron. I can't believe you didn't mention Miff in there. I'm brokenhearted. Anyway, moving on. Eric.
Mr. Chair, just to correct, and any other activities in the municipality that I may have missed.
Thank you very much. Okay. Eric, would you like just any comment on that at all, or I'll move on to other questions first?
In terms of there are so many great ideas and so many things we're working on. We've got some great new staff that are on with great new energy, and so all of the social media videos, they're all being documented, and I'm writing all them down. Our staff are writing them all down, and you will start to see some exciting things coming from the municipality. So just bear with us while we get ourselves organized, but we are listening, and we will be delivering soon. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Eric. And I think it is very important to point out that while we want to run now before we're walking with this economic development department, Eric is still a one-man show. It's coming on quickly for number 2, and then it will follow. So we do have to realize that these people have to get up on speed as well. So we do have a degree of limitation. Unfortunately, we do have to realize that's reality. So yes, we want to do all these things, and I'm sure we will get to them. So we need to hone what exactly can be done in a realistic basis to start with. So let's bring it back to that point. Evelyn.
Yeah, that's part of my feeling is that if we can get this, we have a lot of work that we did over the last few years in terms of getting to the strat plan and doing the official plan and all that thing that had elements of what I would say would be incorporated in a vision. So I think this exercise, we're making this bigger than we need to, is I think we have a lot of building blocks we already have in place that if we had just an exercise where we did the visioning, that actual community vision and get the community involved, And then the rest of the things will fall into place, you know, and I think if marketing is, we have to improve in marketing. I think that you've got a perfect example there around tourism. So if tourism comes out as, yes, that's an important pillar, let's go for it. But I'm concerned if we get into different things without addressing the community's desires before we hop on to really putting a lot of effort, because as you say, it's resourcing both by the municipality and as well resourcing in the community coming and working forward. I think people want to know this is built on some good, solid communications that we've had with each other, had those hard discussions at some forums. And, you know, we just say, we're going to try and do this piece first, then maybe, you know, strengthen the strat plan and strengthen economic development. And it should hopefully inform all the different areas within our community on what is our vision, you know. So I think often when we talk about that, people just think, oh, we got to start from scratch, but we don't. We've done a lot of the key work, and let's just build on that and do that piece and get our community sharing what we think mostly amongst all of us are the key things, that why we love it here and why this place is so great and what's going to continue making this place so great.
Agreed.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I think what we found in previous focus groups and whatnot is that the community really needs to see themselves in the vision. So, and I think that's true for every business, whether they're in agriculture, whether they're in tourism, whether they're on the water, not on the water. They need to see that the vision is going to work for them long term. And so there's lots of great ideas what we can do marketing wise, event wise, but where do we start from an economic development standpoint? I think it's really got to come out of that vision of, you know, this is important to the residents or the businesses that are here already. And so I just want to build on that.
Ron first.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Ron, you're not on there, sorry.
There it is. So, through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's absolutely, but I think what we can do is enter into a collaborative approach with all of the activities that are happening in the municipality, develop the vision going forward, because we do have an unbelievable sense of volunteerism in this community. And I think we should nurture it and take advantage of all the expertise that exists there in order to develop a policy going forward.
Thank you. Shirley, you had a question, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to continue speaking about the thought of a vision, if I may, and I agree with everything that's been said in that regard. And I'm just wondering, and certainly Eric will need to chime in, whether this is a leadership role that this committee could take on. We often feel that we've been overloaded with surveys, but there really hasn't been any for a while now. And could we look at putting out a public survey and perhaps having a meeting of some description? When we've got the craft show coming up, for example, could we put a booth there and talk to people? I mean, there's lots of ways of doing it, but I'm just feeling from this discussion that perhaps this is something that our committee could take on, and under Eric's leadership, we could go forward and try to get some discussion to build upon the foundation blocks, as everyone suggested, that already exist. And perhaps, you know, and you're right, it shouldn't take too long to put this together, and maybe we can accomplish this before the end of the year, and then that information could be used as we start into the new process of creating an updated strategic plan.
Kelly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a question about the scope of the current strategic plan and how much How much scope is outside of what is currently on this work plans focused specifically on economic development, and how would this committee engage those other areas to ensure that it's reflective for the whole municipality?
Are you specifically speaking about one particular area?
Sorry, no. In terms of talking about a strategic plan for Meaford
Mhm.
and not losing this work piece, I think usually strategic plans, are beyond just economic development. So I'm wondering if it's originating from this committee, are there any other areas that we would need to engage to ensure that it's reflective in a overarching strategic plan and the visioning exercise?
I'd say it's just a little bit too early for me to comment on that. I'm just taking it all in at this point. So I think that would be a good discussion for this advisory committee to discuss.
So to Evelyn's point, I think it'd be fair to say, so that plan that was developed was trying to be a bit of everything. It was a shotgun approach. It was really trying to hone it was literally like, what are all of our benefits in all the community? How can we utilize it? It was a lot of, what are our resources? To Evelyn's point, economic development at that point wasn't necessarily thought of as kind of the main proponent of that. So to your point is, yes, this needs to, and that's why I think, and Evelyn said, we're not reinventing the wheel here, because that strat plan was fairly comprehensive in terms of, was a think tank about all of the things that are germane to Meaford. But now with an economic development department and an economic development thrust, how do we hone that to that point? And then bringing it back to the visioning process to be the header for that whole process, to drive the messaging, as to let that drive the economic development messaging. There will need to be many things. So again, I think Savannah did a great example of showing just how wide that net needs to be cast to cover all the different things that need to be looked at. Demographics, what kind of business retention, what kind of families, what are we trying to attract? There's so many different elements that we're going to have to do. So very fair question. And I think it's really twofold here, because I really think we're really close to being able to develop or upgrade that existing strat plan, because a lot of it is good. Shirley's point, but how are we going to tackle the nut of doing the visioning process in, again, a relatively short period of time? We don't meet again until October, this group unto itself. And again, Eric is still getting his staff in place. So this is still a bit of a cumbersome element to try and bring this together, because now we are trying to bring the public element into it. So how are we going to make that work? Shirley and I are the conduit. It's a public advisory committee, so I'm throwing it to you. What do you want to see that look like?
I think when we did a lot of the work before, it was done because we needed to update our official plan. And that was really its driving force. So there was a need to do that and to get some clear priorities for council as well, because they wanted to have, what are the strategic key things that people in the community really wanted. And so focusing on now, I mean, in an ideal world, you do the vision first, and then you go do your strat plan and do your priorities and whatever, but nothing ever works that way. So, it's actually good timing, because the strat plan has to be renewed. So focusing now on completing that vision part, which we didn't quite get to with that official plan renew. It seems like a great recommendation for now to say, let's do that. And then it'll also prep things for, as you mentioned, what about all the other pieces of the puzzle that were really captured in undertaking the official plan, the renewing of that, because it does provide that broader umbrella. And so it should hopefully help with all the other aspects as different aspects are being, renewed or reviewed and updated. So I think it's a good thing, and so maybe the recommendation to do that now, as you suggested, is a really good thing to do, but I'd like to see it really done quickly and build on, you know, the things we've already, you know, we've got some, as we said, good building blocks.
No one else? Okay. Am I hearing a recommendation that we recommend that we'll request that council request staff to actually engage in a visioning process so that we can utilize it as the tool to update the strat plan?
And so,
Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I joined the committee here to see things happen. So I'm just wondering whether we can put a time frame on that development so that we can get forward to suggest some positive economic development priorities for this municipality.
Sorry, Shirley, go ahead.
No, Mr. Chair. So I'm just thinking how to go about this. And our next meeting is in October. So for October, could we request a report or document that would be inclusive of some of the building blocks, being the vision that is included in the official plan, being Evelyn, help me out here. What else you'd like to see included? Let's start with those pieces that we have in place and then determine how we're going to build from there. So Evelyn, what am I missing? What else besides the official plan?
well, I think the staff are able to pull that together on if the committee is recommending that to council that we think this is a good place to start. I think staff can pull all the pieces together because they came from different exercises, not just the OP exercise. So my feeling is they could bring back a report on saying how could that be action put forward.
I will make that motion with you.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Eric, you feel you've now got walking.
Can we
orders.
discuss it before you?
You got marching
Yeah.
orders. So you,
It's
how
too late now,
comfortable-
yeah.
how
Where's
comfortable do
the
you
discussion part fall in there?
We will help you. We will help you. I will help you.
Yeah, it's to Kelly's point, what about all the other areas? And it is a very big umbrella. It's very complicated and very layered. And it's, we have some other priorities that we're dealing with now internally. So, we have a new CAO started, 90 plus days ago. Our priority is on solidifying our operation now, changing the culture in our municipality with staff, and having a more service-centered focus for our residents and our businesses. That takes some time for us to put those pieces in place. So just want to temper everyone's expectations. We are very busy trying to align ourselves internally. So that's one. Two, I was on board with all of the things you were requesting seemed what we were going to be doing anyway. So I was nodding my head saying, yep, sounds good. We're doing it anyway. Just if you could have some sort of understanding about the timelines of those. I know how keen Ron is in get things done. Yeah, those two are our priorities. So just some, entrust us to do that. Let's in the
Thank
works.
you. Just having conversations with you, I fully agree that I think the vision that I think the new CAO and you have already aligns with this. So we're not really reinventing that concept, but it is true. And we do have this little thing called the budget coming up, apparently I've heard about. That's also going to be a little bit time consuming for staff as well. So we're fully cognizant of kind of the limitations. So yes, we do need to try and do this. And to Shirley's point, we are here as resources. So when you are doing this, then we are available to help in any capacity in formulating that, or if you have gaps that you're not aware of that might be, the committee might have already been discussed, then please feel free to use it as resources.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to put forward a motion that Ron does the work. If that's possible. Yeah, he's a great, I've seen him work. He's excellent. So I'd like him to get it done by next week if that's possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
So, Shirley.
And all kidding aside, I mean, if I look at this, I think really we as a committee could do a lot of this work. And I know that we have to be conscious of quorum and how we go about it. But Erica's nodding. If we look at, you know, perhaps Evelyn and Reed and I getting together from the prior committee, and then I can get together with Rob and we can kind of do the groundwork for this report. So it's not, because I fully appreciate everything that you've got on your plate, Eric and Kim as well. So if you're comfortable with that, are you okay with that, Reed and Evelyn, that we kind of meet and try to put some points together for this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I maybe the recommendation is to create a subtask group, a sub-working group to look at how to incorporate quickly a vision that builds on the past foundational block that was developed by McSweeney and Associates, and move forward.
And are there volunteers for that subcommittee? Well, I don't think we can do more than 3 because then we're into a quorum situation. So I kind of have to limit that one to 3.
Okay, so if Kelly would like to.
It's fine. Somebody's got more knowledge on it.
No, I think it would be great to have a new voice.
Okay, so Kelly, Reed, and Evelyn. And again, moving back, we are all available as resources separately from questions, viewpoints as well. So if there's anything that you need information on.
Just for clarity, I was just, so this, the purpose or the end result is just really to recommend the process. Because this committee isn't going to do that work other than recommend the process. That to me would be the deliverable. Is that your?
If I may, Mr. Chair, yeah, I'm thinking, yes, the process, and yes, just putting some thoughts together for those building blocks that we already have in place, just kind of putting that all together in one document, and then a suggestion of how to move that forward, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I know, Alex, I'm looking. Oh, sorry.
No, it's not about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just to sort of clarify what I have, because the committee did quickly pass a motion and vote. And that motion was that the Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee recommend that council direct staff to work with the committee on a visioning exercise. So that's the motion that was passed. I think I'd like to be a little bit more specific with what that means. And I know there's talks about a subgroup, so maybe that's worked into the motion that was technically already passed, but I'm trying to think about procedurally what the steps are in terms of bringing this to council, because I think it is a little bit premature. I think we could do it where we're working on the visioning exercise through an exercise that we could do in the committee meeting. I don't think it has to be as big as report council, because I think we have a lot of legwork that we could do in our meetings. That's just my opinion. But I think we just need to be a little bit more clear as to if this is going to be brought to council, what exactly we're asking.
Fair enough. Michael.
Well, just not having been here for the previous discussions, I've been careful to listen as carefully as I can, but I think the consensus position really is this, and I think it emerged following the first recommendation. It was that in order to get there, where we could make that recommendation, there needs to be some process at this committee. The people who've been involved in the past have an understanding of things that have happened and can pull that together. And once this committee has pulled that together in an appropriate way, we'll be in a position with respect to timing to recommend to council that they direct staff. So I don't think it's inconsistent. I think what it is that we've identified a process for us to not simply lob this at staff right away.
Right, so if the recommendation, so if the motion was actually more to strike that subcommittee, would there also be so to Ron's point, would there also be a time element included in that? Is this something that's being hoped to be brought back for the October meeting, obviously? So that should be in there as well, so that we have a timeline. Sure.
Thank you. So since I quickly brought forward the initial motion, let's look at an amendment, and Alex will help with the language. So we're going to recommend that the subcommittee be created with Reed and Kelly and Evelyn to look at a process for the creation of a document inclusive of already existing building blocks for a visioning exercise, something of that nature. With a report coming back from the sub-working group to this committee for the October meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I think that is sort of a better idea. I will, so.
Have a seconder for that, please. Ron, thank you.
I'm just trying to work on the, I know you said it, Shirley, I'm just trying to make sure that I captured it well. Be established. So 3 people, yeah, would be okay.
Yeah.
So Shirley and then,
Kelly.
okay. So the 3 of you are essentially going to embark on a report to bring back to the committee in October about what the visioning exercise is going to entail? Is that what it is, or?
Process.
Okay,
What a process, what a possible process might be utilized to build on what we have,
okay.
and then hammer it out more.
Okay.
If everyone is agreement with that one, we will put that on the table. Yeah, thought we did, yeah, Ron seconded, thank you. So all in favor of that amendment to the motion? Okay, Carrie, thank you. Eric?
It'll be important to have some synchronization as we move forward, because we will be doing some of these visioning exercises, and so we'll just have to keep in touch and make sure that we are in the process, within part of the process that you're developing.
Yeah. Michael?
Mr. Chair, I apologize, but I have a flight to catch, so I'm going to excuse myself. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm looking at the time. I guess we better move on because Alex will stare at me any second and I'll go up in flames. Are there any committee inquiries? Not seeing any, then we'll move to communications. The committee will consider correspondence received by members of the public during each meeting. To share your comments, thoughts, or concerns with members of the committee, the public can send an email to deputyclerk@meaford.ca. There are 4 points on the communication, and I just think that obviously they were in your agenda package. I think just a very brief overview of the first 3 are all related to gray water between rebate and a recycle system. Reed brought this forward in the agenda planning meeting, and I think they carry weight. So why don't you just give a quick overview of this, Reed, and why you brought that forward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At one of the previous council meetings, there was great discussion about our need for expanded wastewater, and it's probably one of the biggest decisions that this council will make in the next 2 years that will tee up the next 20 years of growth for Meaford. And as I understand it, and I kind of simplified a very technical document that talks about phosphate levels and, you know, what's appropriate. It's an engineering document, really. But it says that through all the initiatives to get capacity, there's probably a capacity of about 500 homes in the current system. To expand our wastewater is a 2.5-year build. They use approximately 100 homes of capacity every year. So 5 years we're out of business. 2.5 years to build greater capacity. So when I came across what other communities were doing to not inhibit growth, but really find solutions to infrastructure shortfalls or capacity issues. There's an Ontario-based company called Greywater, and these documents kind of outline what other communities have done. For instance, Pickering is building a whole community, I think a small community, 21 homes, that all use Greywater to process their additional water needs in this small community. It's added capacity. It hasn't been a huge expense for the municipality. It hasn't inhibited growth because they're still able to grow. They're also attracting companies that are clean tech type companies, which are very green and might be exactly what is a fit for Meaford. Additionally, the community of Guelph has put a municipal rebate in for homes that consider introducing this Greywater system into their system. And I think they can obtain $5,000 towards that. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be a great thing if we proceed to expand our wastewater in the normal channels, but we don't exclude other options, such as using clean tech companies to still expand. So all of this could be done in conjunction with moving ahead on the infrastructure program, but also let's investigate what else can be done that wouldn't stop us from growing in the interim while we're doing that. So that's what these articles are about. One is the rebate from the city of Guelph. The other one is the Pickering homes, the 21 homes that are done. And then there was a article that the Ministry of Innovation in the province actually subsidized 7 schools to actually use their Greywater. So they're kind of helping municipalities find solutions while they're proceeding with larger infrastructure initiatives. So I thought it was worthy of bringing this to the committee's attention, because it might be exactly the type of company we're trying to attract and encourage residents in Meaford to stretch the infrastructure that's here.
Thank you, Reid. It's very pertinent. Quick question, Alex. The correspondence that come here does not necessarily filter through the council.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
So again, coming back to recommendations, so there are 2 things that I see here. One, does this get forward to the infrastructure committee, because this is a natural adjunct for them, because they're obviously dealing directly with that. Or do we direct this correspondence also to be forwarded to council for consideration, because it's valuable information the council should be a bit aware of regardless, even though the infrastructure committee can look at it.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, we can do both or either or. I'm happy to put it on the communications list for council and the infrastructure committee, or both. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments on that? Kelly?
I just had a question about the work that the Sustainability Committee is doing and how are we going to learn sort of priorities or businesses that might pose an economic benefit? Because I see where this is a potential linkage to the committee, but I wonder when we have a committee that's specifically looking at sustainability initiatives, how do we share this information with that group?
It's a very good question. And actually, somebody in the public did ask me this recently, where when we have these four committees that are set up, and they asked whether there were actual specific staff reports relating them to council, which then becomes public record and goes into agendas. What's happening right now, to my knowledge, is that we chairs of the committees are reporting to council what's transpiring at these meetings. That's a little different, just as an ad hoc versus having an actual report that's saying, because you're right, there's going to be a lot of cross-pollination between all the different, an overlap between the different committees. So it is important that every committee knows what the other one's doing, because it will have a direct impact. So whether or not, we haven't really talked about this at the council level, what these committees are going to look like reporting wise, and that probably would be wise to consider moving forward, that there are official reports. Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. That's a really good point, and it is something that I'm looking at in the work that I'm doing, because the answer is we don't have that answer right now. I will say too, the ensuring sustainability and investing in infrastructure committees are brand new to the municipality. So a lot of their work right now is quite simply discussions about what they're going to be focusing on. And the idea is that the committees will cross at certain points, and a lot of the work that we're doing as a municipality will be relevant to the committees because they are from the strategic priorities passed by council. So the idea is that they should all sort of cross and be relevant to one another. And to your point, just evaluating what other municipalities do with their committee reports, there's lots of different options, and I'm looking into them because there is a lot of interesting things we could do. But yeah, for right now, we have the chair does a little verbal report, and obviously the minutes are published. We also have started with our communications team. A social media post goes out following the meeting with a couple of lines about what happened, so that at least the public has sort of like a brief snapshot versus having to watch the whole meeting on YouTube. So definitely things that we are exploring for sure.
So is this coming back to one of those advisory recommendations we're talking about? Would we see an inherent value in that there be some kind of report from each of the four pillar committees to be actually reported to council? Then it becomes public record. Anybody can see it, and so can either all the other committees without watching the video. Surely.
Mr. Chair, thank you. The minutes of each of these committees will be provided in communications to council. So are you suggesting, Mr. Chair's report additionally to minutes?
As much as I appreciate minutes, I don't think minutes are designed to go in as depth in certain elements that can be of more import than that can be reported. Minutes I find to be very just succinct regarding, I think that was discussed. It doesn't necessarily go into elements about how that might have, and this is a very important, for instance, where these points of correspondence would just have gone into saying we read them. There wouldn't have been any real detail about it, and yet it has impact on sustainability of infrastructure. So I think it would be more important to actually have just a synopsis of things, and again, not to make this onerous on staff, but to make it, if the committee determines that it's something of import that really needs to be shared with other committees or council, then that can be done. I'm not saying we need to parse every thing that's being said here and put it out, because otherwise it's going to be onerous.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think for now, what we'll do is, like I said, I will put the correspondence on the agenda for the Sustainability Committee, and I'll also put it on the correspondence for council. That's fine, because regardless, a member of the public could send me something with the same request and I would do the same. I don't think there's a need for a recommendation from the committee, because that's not really in the scope of this committee, sort of the practices and that's more of a procedural piece, I would say. But I will say verbally, that is something I am looking into, because I do agree we need that.
Right. And I would presume, like, so I would, having this conversation at the council meeting, I would definitely bring up the gray water aspect as being of note and worthy of discussion.
Yes.
But so we're reliant on the chairs kind of doing that.
Yes.
So yeah, as long as
Yeah.
we are making sure that salient points are being covered, then
Yeah.
good. All right. There is 3:39. I'm ticking away, Alex. The Southgate's piece as well. So again, Reed had brought this forward, and again, this ties really well into what Savannah was talking about at Gray with, and what Michael was talking about with statistics. So again, Reed, I'll throw it to you if you just want to give a very quick.
Well, Mr. Chair, I might throw it to Eric to
Sure.
talk about, because he actually brought it to my attention. But
Sure.
I thought it was an excellent piece, and think that we should look at adopting something similar.
I don't have too much to add other than I thought it was a good piece. I like the way it was laid out. It was simple. It was contacting businesses and reporting on that. So I think that we will see bite-sized reports like that from us in the near future.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could just add, yeah, I think this is really terrific as well. If I'm correct, I think the last BRNE that Meaford did was about 2009. And we're long overdue. And typically there's funding from the RED program through OMAFRA that perhaps we could look at to hire someone to undertake this piece of work, because it is really, really valuable and will certainly tie in so well with your focus on business attraction and retention in the community. So just wonder if we could have a look at, I don't know the dates now for RED grants, if they're available now or when they're forthcoming, but if we could just keep our eye out for that grant. That's typically what they are for, is for this business expansion and retention. Yeah.
Okay, Ron.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if we look at the one priority marketing action, secure funding for business photography, videography to create marketing material. Getting back to my proposal whereby we were looking at a video to promote various activities in this town. I think this emphasizes the ability, and maybe we should be looking at that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on? Seeing none, that's our next meeting is October 16th, 2024. And if there is nothing else, I will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Well.